So I'm shooting today's video because one of my subscribers posted a content request. Just Think posted, maybe you do a video on the best locations to escape the clutches of the World Health Organization / World Economic Forum / Agenda 2030 / in progress, NTI, monkey, rollout and other plans by the psychopathic, fascist technocrats. That would be really helpful. Cheers. Before I'm going to talk about the places that have been really good and really bad, I want to give you a little bit of my personal mindset on this subject, because I know that people have mixed opinions when it comes to vaccines and COVID, and you know what, to each their own. Some people are for it, some people are against it, but I think the key takeaway is for a person to be able to choose on their own what they want to do with their body, and I'm fully for that. One thing is certain, and that is that COVID was nothing like the influenza that our world went through 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. It was nothing like that, not even close to the same magnitude. Because the influenza that we had in the early 20th century, I believe, was a disease that killed anybody. It could have killed anybody, no matter how old, no matter how healthy. So that was something really serious. With COVID, I think people lost a lot of trust because the people at risk of dying from COVID are people that had a very weak immune system, obese people, overweight people, very old people, very sick people, very unhealthy people in general. A young healthy person is not going to die from COVID, I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. And now you could say, well, it happened in this specific case, there was a person. Of course, there's going to be exceptions. But anyway, most of the times, like 99.9 whatever percent of people who died were people that had issues. Okay, and that's just looking at the data, at the fact, you know, at what those people look like. And, you know, if we compare this to period, you know, when the first vaccines came out, because what happened in like 17th, 18th century is that a lot of diseases popped up. And what happened there was that people didn't have vaccines. The first vaccine was developed in 1796. I looked up this stuff because I want to give you accurate, truthful information. And it is true that a lot of kids died from smallpox in the 17th and 18th century. Before that, why? Because they didn't have vaccines. So family had 8 kids and only 4 of them made it past the age of 3 or 4. You know, it was very sad. Nowadays we have foundational vaccines, which I'm all for. You know, if you think that children shouldn't be vaccinated for smallpox, diphtheria, scarlet fever, measles, influenza, tuberculosis, it's really good that there are vaccines, because you know, it really decreased the amount of children that died at a very young age. And that was really bad when that happened. I mean, before they had the vaccine, it was really bad that so many young children had to die just because there was no vaccine available. So I think for certain diseases, vaccines are great. I will take them. I've gotten a lot of vaccines myself. I believe in some of them. I don't believe in all of them. Let me give an example. Rabies. If you get bitten by an infected animal, you can still get the vaccine, I believe, within 24 or 48 hours. This is my disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. You should consult with a medical professional. Don't take this as my advice. But I believe it's within 24 or 48 hours, if you have been bitten by an infected animal, you can actually still get the shot and not die from it. There is always 2 sides to every story, and I'm not totally against vaccines, just so you know my point of view. I am not personally for taking the COVID vaccine, and I'm also not for pushing everyone to take it. And I'm also not for instance, the COVID passes, simply because why do you need a digital COVID pass? If governments want to make sure that the people who come into their country are actually jabbed or actually vaccinated, then just bring the vaccination certificate. You don't need a digital pass. What for? If you have the physical certificate, you're going to be fine too. I know a lot of people made the valid argument that COVID passes, the digital EU COVID pass, is just another step towards less control for the citizens. And I totally agree with that they have executed a test run on what it is like to identify yourself with a digital ID. They have tested our behavior. They have really tested the process, what it takes to implement it, what it takes to enforce it. They have gotten all this accumulative data now to really be able to tell, or to be able to judge how to do it better next time. And a lot of people who are for COVID passes are unaware of this fact. This is true for sure. Governments want to use a crisis to create more control for themselves. They want less control for you guys and more control for themselves. That's how governments are. Western governments are becoming more like that. Why? Because people have been given too much freedom. We've never had more freedom than we had over the past decades. Never. So we're actually very blessed to have been alive during this time of great freedom. All right, let's talk about the places that have been really bad during the pandemic, that have shown that they are willing to control the people, that they have shown, willingness to sacrifice a lot, human suffering, for more government control. And those places are definitely China, definitely Southeast Asia. I mean, Southeast Asian governments, they were crazy over this. They wanted more control, and still look at China. China, I mean, they just locked down whole buildings, If one person had COVID in the building, they locked down the whole apartment complex, not allowing anyone to leave or get into the apartment, not even for food delivery. I mean, people were blocked in there, not being able to get any food. I mean, terrible, terrible. That goes against any basic human rights. That should never be allowed. The Chinese government has been trying really hard to get more control over its citizens because they have lost control in recent years. Now they're regaining it. And how they're regaining it? Well, central-based digital currencies, COVID passes, mandates, restrictions, lockdowns. They're applying all these bioweapons, all these technological weapons to take control over the people. And it's really sad that this has been happening. China is a place I would avoid. I always avoided it. I mean, I visited once, but I don't like the government. I don't like communism. Not a fan of communism. I never was. I believe in freedom, liberty. That's what I believe in. Southeast Asian countries, Vietnam, what can you say? The Philippines, Jesus, Malaysia, terrible. I mean, people had no freedom in those countries. They didn't even allow spouses of their own citizens to come into the country. They didn't even allow their own citizens to come into the country. I mean, imagine that you're a citizen of a country and you can't come home. That is messed up as it can be. Australia, the same thing. Didn't allow their own citizens to come back in because they were scared that some people would bring in new infections, which of course is a valid concern. But the virus was already in the country. It's not like, it would have been the first imported case. The virus already spread. It was already there, but they were worried about, more variants being imported into Australia. Australia has always been very anal when it comes to their biosecurity. We see this when it comes to importing dogs. I wanted to import a dog to Australia. Practically impossible, an expensive, tedious, ridiculous process you need to follow. Not for me, not for a lot of people. And now we have seen the same anal process applied when it comes to COVID, which shocked a lot of Australians because they thought they were living in the best place on the planet, when in reality they weren't, and it took some time for them to figure that out. Then I would say the United States has been one of the better places. I was in Texas for a good chunk of the pandemic, and I would want to say that Texas is a great place. Liberty goes above everything here. They never enforced COVID passes. There were lockdowns in place for a very short period of time. They got rid of that very quickly. They already lifted mask mandates a long time ago. That's all gone. Now Europe, very difficult too. They have enforced a lot of restrictions, lockdowns. We know Austria has been really bad. We know that certain places like Greece, also not so good. Now they get rid of obviously the COVID passes. They said for the summertime they get rid of it. Also the mask mandates, they dropped all of that, which is good. Will it come back? I'd say rather no than yes. I think once governments abandon that, because now they're getting people used to not wearing a mask, because what they did before is they conditioned people to wear masks, and it worked. People obeyed the law, people obeyed the restrictions, the mandates, and it worked very well. So if they wanted to maintain this strict, tight control, it wouldn't make sense for them to get rid of that now, even though you could argue that they did it for summer season, people are going on vacation. But anyway, the places that have done well are places, that you wouldn't think of. Latin countries. And Latin countries have done well for a number of reasons. First of all, Latin countries, they embrace a very open culture, a very accepting culture, and criticism is not very welcome in their culture. They're very accepting, very liberal people, and Latin countries have been open to migrants forever, for hundreds of years. They have maintained a liberal COVID stance. There have been exceptions. I know you're going to say, well, there have been countries like Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, the southern countries of South America, they've been stricter than others, and that's perfectly right. They have been stricter than others. But if we take a look at Mexico, you could fly into Mexico without a COVID shot, without a COVID test, without anything. You just needed to fill in the form and you were allowed into the country. So that was very liberal. Dominican Republic, very easy to get into. I know they then changed it. They required a vaccine for a very short period of time. They got rid of it. They noticed that, not as many people would come. People would complain. The problem in Latin culture, and that's a good thing, that's what I like about Latin culture, is that people can do whatever they want to do. They are not very receptive to listening that they can't do this because, again, it's a very open culture. It's a very accepting culture. It's a I can do whatever I want culture. We saw that picture continue during the pandemic, which really proved to me that Latin America is a great place to be for the long term, because if a region, is not really following the World Health Organization, World Economic Forum agenda during a time, of a pandemic, but I think Latin countries have been phenomenal. Eastern European countries have been great too. Albania, Serbia, liberal, very open, very relaxed. For the most part, there have been certain phases when they locked down, because in Eastern Europe, the people aren't as receptive to listen to their government as people from Western Europe are, or as people from Australia, or as people from Canada are. So to answer your question, the better places to live for the long term to escape the agenda of the World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, I think the better places are in Eastern Europe, Latin America. You want to consider maybe Texas. You want to consider just places that are very liberal, that have a proven track record of liberty, because those places are unlikely to change their stance even during times of great difficulty. That's my 2 cents. Let me know what you think about this topic. Leave a comment below. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and investment advice several times a week right now. I highly recommend that you grab a free copy of my latest ebook, The Nomad Elite Income Booster, your go-to guide for creating passive income streams using the internet. And if you got some more time left, check out these videos. Thank you for watching.